Shalom, everyone, and welcome to this lesson on Shabbat. This is lesson number 2. We are going to be studying today Shabbat from the perspective of time. We're going to be looking at Shabbat as a temple in time, and we're going to dissect this perspective in order for us to understand Shabbat as a gift. In the future, we're going to talk about Shabbat as a gift instead of just a special day. It's also a gift that the Creator has given us. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of the world, the year, and the soul, better known in Kabbalah as Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. So I hope that after the introduction, you join me so we can go deeper into these concepts and how these concepts actually connect us to what Shabbat is all about. Welcome back. Let's start studying the Shabbat from the perspective of the Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, the world, year, and soul. And let's look and see how this actually can help us understand the deeper meaning that we want to basically learn here in this Shabbat series. So let's start right away. There's a concept called the Shabbat, or it's something that is taught out there. The Shabbat is a temple in time. The first time I learned about Shabbat as a temple in time was when my grandfather gave me a book in the early 90s, and the book was written by Abraham Joshua Herschel. Is a book right here, and this one is in Spanish, right? But you can find this book also in English. Abraham Joshua Herschel, The Sabbath, its meaning for modern man. This concept of the temple in time was articulated by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Herschel in this book, and I recommend that you, if you can, get your hands and study this book, because it looks at Shabbat as a palace in time or temple in time. It's a splendor of space, about the oneness of God, about the presence or the soul on that day, and how this day actually proclaims eternity. And we're going to talk about some of the stuff that Abraham Joshua Herschel talks in this book, but from a deeper perspective, from the Kabbalistic perspective, we're gonna dissect Shabbat and its different concepts and ideas and actions or rituals that we need to do during these days. This Shabbat day is a day that what we're doing is it's not only a ritual that has to do only with the Kabbalah Shabbat, which is the receiving the Shabbat. It's a constant ritual. It's a ritual that lasts 24 hours from sundown to sundown. And how this whole ritual actually have to do, as if you study these lessons in order, you're going to see that eventually we're going to learn that what we're doing in Shabbat is elevating the worlds to the level in which we were in the beginning of what we call in our physical reality time, this level of Atzilut, which is the concept of Shabbat. That's what it is said. It is said in Kabbalistic circles and schools that Shabbat is a little piece of the world to come. It's a little piece of Atzilut. It's a gift that the Creator has given us for us to participate from that light that was given to us in the beginning of creation. So this is very important to understand when we're studying Shabbat. That Shabbat is not just a day, it's much more than just a day of rest. Okay? Now, we cannot have Shabbat unless we talk about Genesis, right? Like in the introduction, we talk about how Shabbat was actually introduced since the beginning of creation. It was the day that it is said that the Creator rested from all the creation which the Creator made, right? And this can bring us to a whole bunch of different kind of conclusions and dialogues and debates of whether or not God really needed to rest. What is the meaning of resting, be'enafash? Very interesting that word was used for resting, because it has to do with the word nefesh, which is a word for soul. And what we're going to understand today is that soul is very important. It's a dimension in our lives that we need to connect to. And what better time to connect to this dimension of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, right? Than the day of Shabbat, right? So let's start by looking at this slide. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This opening verse of the Torah is fundamental for understanding the basics of creation, right? From a physics perspective, 3 key words in this verse are crucial: beginning, heaven, and earth. According to Nachmanides, these words correspond to time, space, and matter respectively. Beginning clearly denotes time, as it marks the onset of temporal existence. Heaven symbolizes space because celestial bodies like stars and planets are observed in the sky, which is in fact a vast expanse of space. Earth represents the physical reality, matter, right? And what we're going to see that this is looking at the beginning of creation as it is narrated by the book of Bereshit, Genesis, as from the point of view of science. And for those of you who have studied Kabbalah, if you have studied Kabbalah for many years, you already should know that all sciences are related to Kabbalah. Kabbalah relates to them as well. It's just that Kabbalah will not talk about those sciences directly, because that's what those sciences are all about studying the physical realm and its different, we should call it dimensions or different energy levels, while Kabbalah is a science that talk about the soul and its different levels and compositions, and how to attain higher levels in order to connect with the Creator and connect in this way as well with everything around us. So what we're going to see here that what we're talking when we're reading Genesis 1:1 is time, space, and matter. And what we're going to see that in later science have this idea coming from Einstein's and other scientists, that they have a problem with time and space, and they come up with an idea that is basically not that apart from the name of time and space. They call it time and space continuum, and which is something very interesting to study if you're interested in studying some of the physics and all that of time, space. Now, in Kabbalah, the concept of Olam, world, Shana, year, which has to do with time, and Nefesh, soul, represent 3 fundamental dimensions of reality. While you have time and space and physical reality, in Kabbalah, we have Olam, the world, right? And that's the world basically is physical reality, and physical reality need to fill a space. And Shana is the time that that physical reality spend in that space, or how it transfer itself from one place to another. And the nefesh, the soul, which is the background energy or the background order that controls all these aspects of time, space, and matter. Now, like it says here, it is three concepts: the Shana, Nefesh, and Olam represent three dimensions of reality. These dimensions are interconnected and offer a holistic view of existence encompassing space, time, and consciousness. And if you are also interested in continuing your studies and from a scientific point of view, there's a science called noetic science, in which they actually are trying their best to use the latest in technology to show that the universe is conscious, that the universe is not something that was just created and it doesn't respond to in an intelligent way. Let's put it that way. That everything has a consciousness, regardless of if it is a mineral, if it is a plant, if it is an atom. Everything has a kind of behavior, right? And it's because there are different levels of consciousness. So in our way, right, the way of Kabbalah see it is that you have the mineral, the vegetable, the animal, and then the human consciousness. The human consciousness is the one that leads us to this spiritual consciousness in which we become one with the Creator, right? And that's what we study in Kabbalah. Now, let's look at this in more detail, each of these concepts. So, Olam world, this dimension refers to space or the physical realm. It encompasses the various levels of existence, from the most spiritual and abstract to the most physical and concrete. In Kabbalistic thought, there are multiple worlds or realms, such as Atzilut, emanation, Bria, creation, Yetzirah, formation, and Asiya, action. Each world represents a different level of divine manifestation and consciousness. So this is the part, that people get confused in the sense, they go like, so when we talk about the world, it talks about space or the physical realm, but it's telling us here that it has four different worlds. In Kabbalah, these, even though they're called Olam, well, Olamot, in plural, these worlds actually are more subtle than this world. They still belong to the Asiya of Asiya. So it's basically the world of action, the physical world of the physical world, divided into four, will have also the higher dimensions, which are Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. So it's kind of like a fractal. If you have Asiya, you're going to have an Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya of Asiya. If you have a Yetzirah, you will have an Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya in Yetzirah. You also will have in Bria an Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya in Bria, and so on and so forth. Each of these four worlds have also four dimensions. In the Olam, which is the world, we have these four dimensions as well. And this is sometimes we need to be careful, because in these different dimensions of the Asiya of Asiya, this is where different things get confused between what is the, for lack of another world, what is the astral or dimensions that certain beings live. We're going to be talking about that pretty soon when we start talking about angels, because there are worlds of the angels, there are worlds of where the demons manifest, and there that other dimensions that other beings actually come and visit in order to do whatever they want here. And we're going to talk about those because the Zohar talk about those beings, okay? And even though we might think that these things have to do with the spiritual realm, they are not. They don't have anything to do with spiritual realm, and this is different. This is the world of the astral plane, as a new age, we'll call it, which is a plane in which it's plane of emotions. It's a plane where all these forms exist, but they don't have a physical body. And because they don't have a physical body, they envy human beings, and that's why they try to impregnate them, or impregnate them meaning go inside them in order to be able to have that human experience of having a body, or they damage them. And sometimes we call these beings into our lives without thinking, because we think, that they can help us, when in reality they're not there to do that. Now Shana, which is another dimension, which is the year, time, right? This dimension represents time. Shana encompasses the cyclical nature of time as experienced in the physical world. Time in Kabbalah is not merely a linear progression, but a dynamic cycle of seasons, festivals, and spiritual energies. Each moment in time is imbued with specific spiritual qualities and opportunity for growth. So when we're studying, Kabbalistic astrology, we're not studying Kabbalistic astrology from the point of view of trying to find out what the future holds. There is a potential, that we can see certain things happening, but not necessarily mean that that is what is going to happen, right? But this Kabbalistic astrology, what actually does, it helps us to measure time, but also to see the patterns in time that can help us connect to different spiritual energies, such as every season. In this specific, if you study the feast of Israel, the holidays of Israel, they fall most of the time on a full moon, and they have to do with harvesting, right? This festival also have certain kinds of spiritual energies depending in which month they're celebrated. And it is very important because these days were prescribed for a reason, and it's because at certain times of the year, certain time in time, we will be able to connect to these energies more in a more open way than before. And that's something that is very important to understand as we go into deeper into what is called Kabbalistic astrology. In our study of Shabbat, inside the Shana, the year, since we're talking about time, we're measuring time. We're measuring 6 days of work and a 7th day of rest. So this has also, to do with that, because as we measure the month, we're counting days, and as we count days, we will find different Shabbats during the year, and each Shabbat has an energy that we can connect. This energy, most Kabbalists basically say that have to do with the portion of the Torah that we read during that day as well. So it's different perspectives of Shabbat and how to tap to that energy, but according to all the Kabbalists, it's the actions that we're doing plus the study and meditation and prayers that we do that actually help us connect. So Nefesh, soul. This dimension pertains to the soul or consciousness. Nefesh is one of the levels of the soul in Kabbalistic thought, often considered the aspect of the soul that is the most connected to the physical body and its life force. Remember, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Haya, and Yehidah, these are the different levels as let's see if I can get the pointer here. So Nefesh has to do with the word of action, right? Ruach has to do with Yetzirah, Neshama with Bria, Haya with Asilut, and Yehidah is the Ein Sof. So we're talking about this soul of vitality. Some Kabbalists call it the animal soul, right? However, in the context of Olam Shana Nefesh, it represents the broader concept of consciousness and individuality encompassing higher levels of the soul, such as Ruach and Neshama. So when we talk about Nefesh, we say soul, we are generalizing the 3 levels of Naran, which is, you're going to hear that in when you study Kabbalah, which is the NRN, the first letter of each of those names of the soul, which is nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So when we say nefesh, they're referring to this, right? So these are what is attainable in our lifetime, in our bodies, right? As if we connect to Shabbat. And we're gonna see in the future how this extra soul that we receive during Shabbat have to do with the neshama, and then how that breath of life departs, and we're left basically with the ruach and nefesh. But there are times during the week that we can still connect with the energy of Shabbat by connecting to that neshama. So it's very interesting thing about Shabbat, that is not only a day of the week, it can be also a time during the week other than Shabbat. So these three dimensions are interrelated, suggesting that every aspect of our existence involves an interplay between the physical world, the passage of time, and our consciousness or soul. Understanding this interplay helps in achieving a harmonious and balanced life, aligning our actions with the divine purpose embedded in the fabric of reality. So when we know these concepts, when we know that we're here during a time in a body that occupies space that is made of matter, and that this body will not be alive if it wasn't for the light of the soul that gives it life, we become more conscious, we become more aware that everything around us happens for a reason, and that reason is for us to attain higher levels of consciousness, and that this conscious life needs to be nurtured, needs to be developed as we go throughout the year to these different stages, to these different festivities and special dates in which we celebrate different things. That includes even our birthday. That's something that we can actually have a video about this, what's so important about a birthday, right? And also the dates of a death of a sage, right? If a person that is wise die in certain times, it also brings down some kind of light that we can connect to during that specific time. And that's why some Kabbalists visit the different graves of certain rabbis and Kabbalists, right? So understanding this, understanding that we are in a physical body, that we have certain amount of time in this universe, and that we have a soul that is here just visiting and develop, and the soul needs to develop inside this body a connection with a higher realm. We need to understand that Shabbat is a gift given by the Creator in order for us to have a little taste of what it is like when we connect with that level of consciousness, that spiritual level of consciousness called the Garden of Eden, which is Shabbat as well, okay? Now, Shabbat, like I mentioned before, is a spiritual temple in time. We need to prepare for it. We need to do certain things, and we're going to talk about how to prepare before Shabbat, okay? What to do when we are welcoming the Shabbat, what to do during Shabbat, and how to depart from the Shabbat, right? So we enter a temple, we are inside the temple, and then we have to exit that temple. But right now, we're not going to talk about those details. We're going to talk about why Shabbat is considered a spiritual temple in time. And this concept of Shana, basically Shana, Olam Shana and Nefesh, soul, can help us, understand that. All right? Now, because we understand that we are in this physical realm, we're a soul, and we're here for an amount of time, Shabbat becomes a time in which we can sanctify time over space. In Jewish thought, holiness is often associated with physical spaces, such as the temple in Jerusalem. However, Shabbat shifts this sanctity from a physical location to a temporal dimension. It creates a sacred period every week, irrespective of geographical location. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can celebrate Shabbat, you can enter inside this temple. It doesn't have to be the temple in Jerusalem, as long as you are somewhere, right, living in this physical realm, you can enter Shabbat. It doesn't matter where you are, okay? Now, Shabbat is a regular spiritual renewal. It's a time in which we're charging our batteries, right? It occurs every 7 days, offering a regular opportunity for spiritual renewal and reflection. This cyclical pattern ensures that Jews can constantly reconnect with their faith, community, and value. And remember, when I say the word Jews, it's just not only for the Jews. And you're gonna hear a lot of people teaching that Shabbat it's only, can only be celebrated by Jewish people. If you consider yourself part of Israel, that you are the kind of person that you're looking for connection with the Creator directly, meaning you're studying Kabbalah, you're doing it in a way that is authentically, you are part of Israel. Israel means Yashar El, directly to El, the Creator. So when we talk about Jews, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Jews are the only ones that can do this, even though they are born with a special DNA, spiritual DNA. In order to have this connection a little more easier way, they have a mission in this world as well. That does not mean that people that are studying Torah, Kabbalah, and are not Jewish cannot have also or cannot participate on this. Why? Because we all one soul, right? Even though we come from different parts of the soul of Adam, the whole soul needs to participate from this light. The whole body needs to be enlightened. So, yes, you might not have to do the same thing as a person that follows Judaism does, even though it would be preferred because you can connect to all these different levels that Kabbalah talks about. But if you are a person that are keeping Shabbat, even if it is in your own way and you're not Jewish, it's a start, okay? And if you want more information, just if you know someone that knows a rabbi, just ask the rabbi. Don't follow I'm not a rabbi, but I can tell you from the point of Kabbalah, no one is exempt, no one is left out when it comes to Shabbat, okay? Because we are all one soul. Separation from the mundane. Just as the physical temple was separate from the ordinary aspects of life, Shabbat separates the holy from the mundane. The day is set apart from the rest of the week, dedicated to the rest, prayer, and family, distinct from work and routine activities. Now, this is a day in which we are entering a spiritual temple in time. We are there to refresh our soul, to recharge our spiritual batteries, and also is a time in which we are not going to do certain kind of work that we're gonna talk about later in another lesson. And the reason for that is because in 6 days God created everything, right? Remember, if you are studying Kabbalah for a while, I suggest that you study your intermediate lessons in which we talk about how the world became, when I say world, not this world, but the spiritual world, as this development was happening. Eventually there was a world of chaos. The world of chaos was what we know as a Shevirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, and that needed to be fixed. And that's where the first day of creation came about with Chesed, which is basically the goodness of God, right? because one was severity, was judgment, the other one needed to be this mercy of the Creator. With mercy, He created that. Although you're gonna hear also with wisdom, God created, the universe, and that's a really interesting way also to see the creation of the world, wisdom and mercy, which is the right pillar of the tree of life, which is mercy as well. So this is the thing, when we're entering the day of Shabbat, we're entering the kingdom. If we look at the tree of life, we're entering the kingdom from Chesed, Gevurat, Tifaret to Netzachot and Yesod, and then Malchut, which is Shabbat. We're entering the kingdom. What kingdom? The kingdom of heaven during that time. And then from the perspective of the Kabbalists, we are elevating ourselves to that realm of Atzilut. So it's very important because during this day, we are not only resting, we're praying. We're spending we're having family time, right? And we do things that are different that we don't do, or different than what we do during the weekdays. And it's because during the weekday, God created, right, the heavens and the earth. On the seventh day, He rested. We do the same thing, meaning that there was a lot of changes. There were changes during those 6 days. In Shabbat, we're not allowed to work because we cannot change the nature of things. We cannot change one thing to another one, or move one thing into another place, right? And we're going to talk about those different kind of restrictions that we have on Shabbat. Now, another thing that we need to keep in mind is that these days are holistic rest and reflection. Shabbat provides a time for holistic rest, encompassing physical, mental, and spiritual aspects. It is a time to pause, reflect in one's life, relationships, and connection with God, akin to the spiritual experiences one might seek in the physical temple. Okay? So it's a good time for meditation, prayer, introspection, and connection with ourselves and with who we are for real. And also a good time to connect with others, since we as Kabbalists are supposed to be studying and practicing the only law that the universe wants us actually to practice, which is love your neighbors as yourself. Which, if you look the world around you, it's really hard to believe that can ever happen. But we insist that it's going to happen. With all this chaos, all these wars and craziness that is happening, it's just the beginning of what is called the birth pains of the Messianic age. Okay, so Shabbat, right, also is an emphasis on presence and being. In Shabbat, the focus shifts from doing to being. Activities such as creating, building, and working, which dominates the rest of the week, are put aside. Instead, there is an emphasis on presence, mindfulness, and simply being, reflecting a state of spiritual elevation similar to what one might experience in a sacred space. So there you have, this says mindfulness, reflection, and just be. It's basically right here, tells you what Shabbat is all about. It's about us not trying to change things during that day, because on that day everything is perfect. Okay. Also, like I mentioned before, there's a communal experience, right? This is a time in which we need to concentrate on practicing that law of loving your neighbor as yourself. And we do that by practicing that with those that are closer to us. Shabbat is a time for communal gathering, much like the physical temple was a place for communal worship. Families and communities come together to pray, share meals, and enjoy each other's company. fostering a sense of unity and collective spiritual elevation. So this is a day in which we are participating together as one and connecting with each other as one in order to practice and have a taste of what the one soul, the collective soul of humanity, which is Adam Harishon, is all about. And when we do that, those are closer to us, and then we can, if we do that properly, with those are closer to, then we can expand that to those that are surrounding us. And if we do that among ourselves, and that's the key for world peace, according to Kabbalists, just as Yehuda Ashlag, the Baal HaSulam, that the time that when we start loving each other properly, that we start practicing that law of love your neighbor as yourself properly within ourselves, those of us that call ourselves Israel, then the whole world will unite to us, and there will be world peace. The Messianic age will come, and there will be no more war, because that's exactly what's happening. The nations are pressuring those who are supposed to be the light to the nations to become light to the nations, because they are divided. And that's something that is happening all over the world. We're divided between American Jews, Israeli Jews. In Israel, they divided between those who are from the right to the left, and here in the United States as well, we have Jews that are on the right, Jews are on the left. So there's a lot of division. Once we put those divisions aside, just like in Shabbat we're supposed to do, when we become one soul with one mind as one heart, then the whole world is going to follow, and there will be world peace. And that's something, that in Shabbat we can start practicing that, regardless of our political views, regardless of our ideals and things like that. This is the day in which we can practice that. Okay, so Shabbat is a temple in time. Okay, you enter that temple in order to recharge your soul batteries. You enter that temple in order to disconnect from the physical realm and connect to the spiritual realm, to have a taste of eternity, to have a taste of the world to come, Atzilut. That's what is Shabbat. Shabbat is also a prelude of the Messianic age, in the sense that every week we're reminded that the 6 days of creation are the 6 days of correction, and Shabbat is the correction itself. So in human history, as we measure time since the beginning of Adam having consciousness of its own spirituality, we count time, and a lot of people say, but if the world was created millions of years ago, how come in your calendar you are just in the year in the year 5784? And it's because we are counting time from the time that Adam became aware of who he was, the physical Adam. And now we have 6,000 years of correction, and then we enter that 7 millennium time, right? That is called a Shabbat in our time of correction. And so every week we're reminded of this pattern in not only spiritual development, but also in history. Okay? Now, as we understand Shabbat in this way, it's very important also to know that Shabbat is a day in which we are, in one way or another, connected to or extra soul, and we're going to talk about that extra soul in other lessons. But in that day we shine a little more, because that day we are connecting to a higher level of our soul called the neshama. And that neshama, when it connects to us, it gives us an extra soul. It's a time also to study. And why we study during that time, we study the portion of the week. And the reason we study the portion of the week is because we have that extra soul in us that can kind of like the light of Moses during that time, giving us that Torah, that light of the Torah during the Shabbat time. So it's very important to not only prepare for Shabbat, receive Shabbat properly, practice the 3 meals of Shabbat, pray during Shabbat, meditate during Shabbat, and study during Shabbat, and have those communal experiences during Shabbat, and also have this awareness and consciousness that Shabbat is not just the day you are inside a temple. Okay, so in summary, and to finish this second lesson, what we need to understand is that Shabbat as a temple in time captures the essence of a sacred recurring moment that allows for spiritual elevation, rest, and renewal. It parallels the sanctity and purpose of a physical temple, but within the dimensions of time. And not only, I would add, not only the dimensions of time, but it connects time to nefesh, to soul. And this is something very important because our soul is entering that temple in time. And we're participating in this service that is inside this temple, but also we are receiving this gift that the Creator has given us. And I mentioned, a gift because Shabbat wasn't given by the Creator out of charity. It was given as a gift. And we're going to study that concept of Shabbat as a gift in future lessons, okay? So this is it. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. There'll be more lessons on Shabbat coming every week. And if you have any questions or anything like that, or any concept that you want me to cover more in depth or explain, make sure you leave those in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or anything, or read any comments that you are putting in the comments below. Also, please share, subscribe if you haven't done so. Share this video. The more people that see this video, the better, in the sense that we can spread this wisdom all around the world. And let me know if you have any ideas for any other video that you would like to do. This video actually about Shabbat was based on a question of one of the students that asked me that we have done, videos about the holidays, but not about Shabbat. If there's any way for us to actually do videos so we can understand better what Shabbat is all about in depth, not just something that is talked about in 1 hour and that's it, but in depth, part by part, especially for a person that is starting to celebrate Shabbat and is studying Kabbalah, how this person can look at Shabbat from the spiritual perspective and not from a religious perspective. And this is why this series is started. It was because of a question of one of you, one of our students. All right, so thank you very much. Shalom, and I'll see you in the next lesson.